Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. I am back in the car, back in Saudi Arabia after a lovely vacation to England. Very much needed, very much enjoyed. So, as I said in the last video, normal service resumes, which is just me chatting, I suppose. So it's time to chat, and there is something specific I wanted to talk about today. Obviously, we've got Rally Estonia coming up this weekend. If you haven't watched the preview for that, do go and check it out. But there's something I wanted to talk about, and it got me, it was a video that I watched, that got me thinking about it, and it's how do we make rallying more appealing? And that might seem like an odd question, and I think if you look at it in the context of the WRC, I would say that rallying in many ways is quite appealing. I'm not going to go into all of the reasons that it's not, because there are several problems with the WRC right now, I think, in terms of its promotion and content. But if you look at overall viewing figures, it is pretty popular globally. And there are lots and lots of good things about it. You know, it's very spectacular to watch. The backdrops are amazing. There's very talented drivers, all of that stuff. You know, yes, there are some problems. You know, the content being behind a paywall is problematic. The cars are problematic for me. The lack of social media content, or the way that the social media content is handled, is not ideal. So there are some problems, but I don't think that is necessarily the big issue in terms of attracting new people to the sport. However, I think I have worked out what it might be, and that is indeed related to social media, and in particular, that phenomenon known as the influencer. I think what I'm talking about here is not necessarily like the massive global name, you know, someone like Ken Block, who obviously did a huge amount for the sport. I think that is important, and I think rallying does need someone like that, or some individuals like that. But I think it goes a little bit further. I wonder if it's something that we need at the lower levels of the sport as well. So the reason, the thing that sparked this is I follow a few car content creators from various areas, you know, some that review cars, some that make videos about restoring and rebuilding cars, sim racing, rallying, racing, all kinds of things. And I think what I've noticed is that there seems to be more of them in different spaces of motorsport than there are in rallying. There are a few guys doing a really good job in the rally world, but a lot of them seem to have started fairly recently, so they haven't yet had the chance to grow. You know, we don't have some of the bigger names. The one that always jumps out to me, who you may not be familiar with, is Adam LZ. So I've followed him for a while now. He's an American-based YouTuber. Started off with BMXs, then got into cars. So his content is basically a mix of drifting and kind of restoring and building mostly Japanese cars, not exclusively Japanese cars. And I just sort of feel like rallying doesn't have anyone like that. If I search for rally car build, for example, on YouTube, there's not actually that many videos that come up. There's a few build montages and things, but there's not lots and lots of people building rally cars and making videos about it, for example. And there's lots and lots of people competing and making videos about it. So I think that's a gap that we are yet to fill, and someone has yet to kind of make that space their own. There are, as I said, there are a few people that are getting into that area, but a lot of them have not been going very long, and it's going to be interesting to see how they develop and how they fill that space. But it's not something that's that big yet, and I think that's really problematic. You know, I think if you look at people like Adam, Jimmy Oakes is another one, there's Samit, who's a Japanese-based drift YouTuber. There's a lot of people operating in those spaces, certainly when it comes to drifting and the Japanese car scene, who are doing a really good job, and I am sure that is probably true if you look at other car subcultures, German cars or American cars, I'm absolutely certain. So I just think we need someone to fill that space, and I think we need someone to create a link between rally cars and road cars, which probably sounds quite stupid, doesn't it? Because that is what a lot of people love rallying for. A lot of people say, well, rallying was at its best when it had a direct link to road cars through Group A and things like that. And I think it's telling that if you look at other content creators, we don't actually see that. And I'm going to give you an example using that Adam LZ fellow I mentioned. So Adam has a few Evos. He also actually has an Impreza rally car that he does some sort of rally sprint events in. But what I find interesting, and this isn't just limited to Adam, but I think he's an interesting example of it, and is one of the bigger creators, is that when people like him and others talk about Evos and Imprezas, they always talk about them in terms of like the Japanese car scene, or in terms of track driving or grip driving, as a lot of people refer to it now. They hardly ever mention the fact that these cars were created to go rallying. You know, the Evo and the Impreza only exist because those manufacturers wanted to build and homologate a car for Group A, and then obviously spent years and years refining it. So if we look at the evolution of those cars, if you'll excuse the pun, you know, their development, the addition of you know, adjustable centered differentials and intercooler water spray and all this technology, that was a result of the motorsport programs. You know, that was to enhance those cars for motorsport use. But if you look at people who make content about those cars, they never really talk about that heritage. They talk about using them on track, and some of them do use them on track. Adam, as I said, has an Impreza, but it feels like that link between road car and rally car has been lost, even with really, really iconic cars like those. And obviously, if you look at modern rallying, you know, we've got this massive disconnect with Rally 1 in particular between rally car and road car, which makes it even harder if you want to focus on your content around current motorsport and around newer cars. So I think it just shows, doesn't it, that disconnect between, you know, people making content about Evos and Imprezas and not really talking about rallying for the most part. It highlights the issue for me, and it makes me think, well, you know, what are we doing wrong? If you've got existing content creators, some of whom, you know, are very well known, they're making videos about these cars but not really talking about their rally heritage. And if they do projects with those cars and build them up, you know, they're often track biased. It just shows, doesn't it, that there's still a gap there. So for me, that is the space that we need to break into. It's not necessarily people making content about WRC. I noticed as a content creator, which I hate to call myself in a way, because my channel is tiny, is that my WRC videos tend to do the best. But I actually think it's the space underneath that where there's a gap for people to make stuff and to attract people to the sport. You know, no one is going to come into rallying and compete in a WRC, but they could come into rallying and compete in a local rally sprint event or single venue stage rallies, or maybe, you know, even entry level forest and tarmac rallies. So it's bringing people into that. Again, if you look at some of the other content creators out there, Jimmy Oakes is a good example, and it is worth watching if you like car builds, but he also does some competition and competes in drifting at kind of grassroots level. It's that can, you know, bring people in a little bit, isn't it? So I would like to see more of that. I think, as I said, there is definitely space for someone to come in and do that with rallying. And I think what's really, really important is not just the fact that they do it, it's the way that they do it. I think if you look in drifting in particular, I know I make this comparison a lot, and I'm sure some people are fed up with it. What I think they do really, really very well, if you look at Drift Games, is another channel which is a really good example, and they have promotional experience of Drift Masters and quite high level championships. But I think it's the way that those creators make the content in terms of making it appealing. You know, there's lots of B-roll, the music choices, the way they shoot things, all of that seems very tailored towards a specific audience, and they very much do that, I think, because they know who they're making content for. You know, they're making content for the people who own certain types of car and like certain fashion, and you know, that it's kind of a lifestyle thing, isn't it? And by making the content in a certain way, and they make the content fun and visually very exciting and interesting, and as I said, you've got the music and all of that stuff. I think that makes it appealing, doesn't it? You know, considering there are a lot of these channels are small in terms of the number of people they have working for them, the production values are quite high. So I think I would like to see someone come in and bring a bit of that energy, not necessarily copy and paste in terms of the format, though I think there is merit to paying attention to how they're reaching out to people. But I just think we need someone who can connect with younger people, but also bring in some of the rallying elements. You know, it's not just about going to an event saying, hi, I'm at an event, this is a rally car, I did this stage. It's about exciting people about the cars, exciting people about the backdrop. You know, as I said at the top of this video, rallying has some of the best sporting backdrops in the world, probably the best sporting backdrops in the world. So if you can present that in the right way, you know, that's doing half of the work for you, isn't it? And similarly, you know, if you look at the driving and the types of events and the challenge of rallying, well, it's as good as anything, isn't it? You know, drifting appeals people to a lot of people because it's smoke and noise and sideways. Well, rallying is smoke and noise and sideways in its own way, isn't it? So I think it's that age-old problem, isn't it? If you look at rallying is a great product, you know, visually, excitement, drama. It's as good, probably better than any motorsport in the world, but it's the way that we present it. And I think there's a gap there. You know, there is a gap for content creators to come in and share that, you know, even if it's at the very grassroots of the sport, and help to bring people in. And as I was saying, you know, to bring back that link between the cars and road cars and things that people can actually own and aspire to and get involved with. So that is kind of where I think, as I said, there is lots wrong with WRC. You know, I'm aware that even they could learn from some of the things that I've talked about in how they present the content and how they film it and how they edit and how they use music and all of that stuff. I think we do need to be very conscious of who we're aiming at, even with the professional international level championships and even, you know, British championships and things. How we present that is really important, and I think we're probably tailoring a little bit too much towards the slightly older audience right now. So I would like to see them doing things to bring in a younger audience and using horrible platforms like TikTok and the like to bring in those younger people. But I think, as I said, you know, the big thing for me is getting people at the lower end and getting those content creators building their own cars and all of that kind of thing. And I think perhaps just to finish and getting back to the WRC, maybe the thing that we actually need here is for the WRC to go to the USA. You know, there is a lot of talk of that happening, and I think it probably is going to happen in the next year or two. And maybe that is going to be the key to unlocking this, because if you look at all of the, you know, the big car YouTubers, the majority of them are based in the US, and maybe that's the thing. You know, maybe what we need is someone in the US to get involved in rallying and start making content about it. You know, there are some guys out there doing it in the US, I know, and there's a guy in Canada, isn't there, Ryan's Road to Rally channel, that's worth checking out. So he charted his journey from competing on a sim or using a sim to learn to drive and then buying a rally car and doing his first event. So that is well worth checking out. And maybe it's guys like that in North America who are going to be the ones to break that down, just simply because of the power that YouTube has in the States, and, you know, the size of the viewing audience in the States. So maybe that is the step that's gonna change things. So that is my thought on it. I would love to hear your comments on how you think we can make rallying more appealing and reach out to a new audience, particularly a younger audience. So let me know what you think. That was a bit of a rant from me, I know, a bit of a waffle, but it's just something I wanted to share because I thought it was really interesting. So let me know what you think. As always, hit that like and subscribe button. It's very, very helpful if you do that. And I'm talking about influencers, so I have to say it, don't I, because it's very fitting. Otherwise, make sure you follow me over on socials as well, and I will see you next time.